Hello and welcome to Editing Street Photography with Pierre T. Lambert. My name is Aaron Nace. I'm the founder and host of Flern.com, and I'm so excited about today's broadcast. For those of you guys who have not joined us yesterday, this is actually part 2 of our broadcast with Pierre. We're doing some amazing edits in Lightroom, going through street photography. Yesterday, we learned a ton about how to color, dodge and burn, and just do general editing on street photos. And we really did a great job showing the before and after and taking your images to the next level. I'm so excited about today. We're going to be continuing along our journey and introducing you Lightroom presets and showing you how Pierre actually takes his images through the Lightroom preset process. We're going to go through the process of creating Lightroom presets and applying them to your photos. And I think one of the biggest things I loved about yesterday's broadcast was Pierre actually showed his whole process for getting the pictures from Lightroom onto Instagram. So like those export settings and everything that he uses to make sure that they post really, really well on social media. Let's take a second to go through our chat and see where you guys, by the way, let us know what country you are watching from. We want to give a big shout out to you guys. Here we have Sean Cosell says, great part 1. Thank you so much, Sean. Andreas, how you doing? We've got Cody Bear in the chat. Cody, great to see you. Julio Garcia says, hey guys, yesterday I learned a lot. I had to see the video twice. Thank you. Fantastic. Lindsay Palmer, howdy, how you doing? So great to see everyone in this chat. So let us know what country you guys are watching from. Paco is from San Francisco. I already knew that, Paco. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today. Really great from everyone in the chat. Ferry says, hello from Indonesia. Pierre and I took a little bet to see if we could get any of these right beforehand. Jay Montemini says at Boston, Massachusetts. My mom is from there. Fantastic. Sean Cosell is from Germany. Neil Kelly is from Torquay in Devon, United Kingdom. We've got Mia from France. Sherry from Indiana.
Bonjour la France.
Oh, there we go. Pierre and I are both in Chicago, so we're kind of neighbors. Jacob is in San Jose. Hey there, Jacob. Beautiful in San Jose. Andreas is from Swiss. Beautiful. And Michelle is from Montreal, Canada. Oh my God, it's fantastic. And Krishna is in Chicago as well. Look at that, Pierre.
That's awesome.
You win. You win the closest to our broadcast. Pierre and I are in Chicago right now. How
Maybe we
fun.
can see them somewhere.
Yeah, let's meet up by the lake for a little bike ride, a little hangout. It's going to be so much fun. I'm excited about today's broadcast, but before we get into it, let's talk about our schedule. So this morning, we were getting started as a professional designer with Paul Tranny. Next, we jumped into our Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge with Kathleen Martin, and she did some really cool stuff with black and white and color combinations. So we're going to be reviewing some of those entries later in today's broadcast. So if you haven't already done so, be sure to get those edits done and submit them to our Discord server. You can find that information right here in the chat. We've got our Editing Street Photography, Photo Retouching with Pierre T. Lambert, Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Claddy. We've got Packaging Design with Nick Longo, and our XD Daily Creative Challenge with Howard Pinsky. And then, of course, our Design Off with Buduval and Made by Lisa Marie. We've got such a great lineup today, so we're going to be coming at you. I was going to say we're going to come at you hard today, but I don't even know what that means. We are going to be giving you some great Lightroom knowledge today, and then be sure to stick around for the rest of our broadcast. So I'm going to hand things off to one of my good friends, fantastic travel photographer. He refers to himself as a worldwide adventure travel photographer, currently stuck in Chicago. But today he's going to be teaching us some wonderful things in Lightroom. Pierre Lambert.
Good morning,
doing,
everyone.
buddy?
Super excited. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, Pierre.
That's awesome.
What are we going to be learning today?
So today we're going to be jumping in the lake with a camera. No, that's for another episode. Today we're going to actually travel to New York City and we're going to be editing some photos in New York. And the real emphasis I want here is how can we find our style as photographers and how can we keep it consistent? Because I find that this is the most difficult, is to actually keep it consistent in time. And whenever we're doing series, yesterday we talked a lot about doing series to tell better stories. How can we integrate different images together and have something that is cohesive in terms of style and also in the narrative you're going for? And
cool.
One of the best way I've found is actually to create your own presets and work through that. And so I kind of want to show you my thought process if I'm creating new presets. And then we're going to create them. We're going to try to use them on different images. And I kind of want to show you what are the most important things you need to save in presets, because there's, I won't say wrong way because nothing's ever wrong in life, but there's like less optimal ways of creating them. And there are really optimal ways so that you can apply to no matter what camera, no matter what kind of ambience you're in or city. And sometimes it translates. Sometimes I created presets for Japan and they worked out great for Chicago. For example, that photo that I have right now on my screen was using a preset that I created for Tokyo mainly. It's one of the street preset pack that I created that I use every day. And I discovered that with those moody tones I had that day, I could actually really picture and use the same preset, the same tones that I had in Tokyo for that image. And that's exactly why I want you also to create your own. You can grab mine, Aaron's, any of your favorite creators' presets and use them. But what I highly recommend you to do is once you have those, change everything and make it your own. You know, it's like a good recipe. It's only good if you put your secret ingredient.
Exactly. It's a really good place to start. And I would say my experience with Lightroom presets is I always start off with the preset just to see what it does to the photo, but I always make my own special changes because every photograph is different based on the lighting conditions, based on the colors used. So you always want to make sure you get in there and tweak those settings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, presets is like a base for starting to edit. It will give you your colors, your tones, and after you need to do your local adjustments, you need to do things like you said, to match it perfectly to what you're trying to do, especially if you're going for that one-off photo. If you're doing a series with like 300 photos and you don't have the time to do them in details with as much precision as you want for each photo, then you might be able to batch edit them. But otherwise, you will love starting with something consistent at the beginning. So we're going to grab a few photos from New York City. The theme is going to be a little bit around street photography, obviously, but I want to work with different lights here. So there's going to be those two first shots. What we can see, first of all, is that in both of those images, we have the sun peeking through. So that's going to be interesting for me because I'm already asking myself, okay, that's one point that's going to grab the attention in that photo. Again, whenever you're shooting, you want to remember what is your subject and where do you want people to look? What do you want them to remember whenever they stop looking at your photo? That's always a good trick. Yesterday, we had the blindfold game with Aaron where he kind of masked his eyes. Yeah, we might try again today.
Let's do it.
So that people can know what it's like and why it's so important to do it. But basically, those two images have that common theme of having the sun and also a kind of blue sky. So I am going to try to create something that's going to add a little bit of warmth in those images and really brings out that light so we can see it. Then we have two shots, or almost three. Yeah, two shots that are completely artificial light, one taking in the metro and one taking at night in the street. And I kind of want to just show on those how we can create a different mood from the surface, for example, overground versus underground. And next we have a few photos. We're going to try to apply the presets we created before on and see what changes we would have to do to make them look good on the other photos. And before we start, I kind of want to give a little photography tip when you're shooting, because editing, Aaron, you know it,
Let's hear it.
is like the achievement of your creative vision. But the
Yes.
more you can get right in camera, on the field, the easier it is. And there's stuff you actually, if you miss it by just 1 centimeter or 2 inches, you will never be able to recover it after. So here's a great example of something that failed a little bit. That was a shot I ran in the middle of the street. I was in New York and I saw those people walk by. We have like 3 people. They're like almost at that equal distance between each other, at least with the cart, and same kind of pattern in the shoe, in the walking. And I was like super excited to get that. But then I realized, because I kind of rushed it, my triangle is completely off center. And some people might be, it's not a big deal, but for me, it really throws me off because we have the guy perfectly aligned in the middle of that image. So if we pick that up and we look at it like that, the guy is kind of perfectly in the middle. And then we have that triangle that's slightly off center. So if you're shooting again, you want to go back to that location, or you want to make sure when you get there, you get it right. And especially important with symmetries, or when you have patterns, geometrical patterns. I see it a lot in a lot of students or participants in workshops. We miss it by just 2 inches. And Aaron, I don't think there's anything you can do for that.
You know, I gotta say, you could probably get it in Photoshop. It would take a few minutes to do. I wish I could jump into your screen right now and do. In Lightroom, no, but in Photoshop, you could get that right. But in my experience, it's just paying a little bit more attention to symmetry and converging lines in your photos. Because could you do that? Yes. To do it right, it might take like 45 minutes. And if you just did it in person, it would take 2 seconds.
For Aaron, 45 minutes. Because for me, it's going to be like checking the right tutorial. No, because I imagine you would have to cut the bottom part of the image, move it to the left, and then create a new pattern on the right, which I mean, is so much work versus just moving a little bit to your left or to the right on the location. So make sure you never miss that. I miss it sometimes. That's okay. Just remember, practice makes perfect. So the more you're able to notice your mistakes, and the less you will make them. So, you know, it's lifelong work. All right,
definitely.
Let's open our develop module. This was shot at sunrise. I went for a little run and discovered that the sun was rising just by my apartment, like straight on those avenues, and it was really good looking. And
I'm excited to see what you're going to do with this, Pierre, because honestly, this would be a shot where I would probably look at it and be like, it's not good. Totally underexposed foreground. This is, a throwaway. The buildings are super converging at the top. And personally, I'd be like, I don't even know if I'm going to use this shot. So I'm excited to see what you can pull out with this.
Well, that's going to be interesting, because you mentioned 2 things. The buildings, first of all, the buildings for me have no interest. So that's really good that you mentioned that. And underexposed, yes, I underexposed it for a reason, because that was shot on the R3, ASIM R3, I think. And I know I can pull out a lot after, but I can't really recover if I'm burning that part. So I underexposed on purpose.
So you purposely underexposed?
I actually used the mode in camera, which is called, let me grab it. It is called highlights, if I'm correct. And
highlight priority when you're metering.
Yeah. And it only exposes for the highlights, meaning you get those
That's
really
nice.
Contrasted images. Yeah. It's really helpful. I got to say, sometimes it looks very dark, like in that image. But whenever you're like shooting run and gun, and you don't want to think about it, and you want to make sure you got your highlights right, because that's what you're going for, works great in my opinion.
Cool, good tip.
All right, so let's look at a few presets here that I created just to show you, first of all, what I would kind of play with, and that kind of gives us an idea of where we could go. Why would I use presets in that case? As I mentioned, I wanted to keep something consistent, so I can just run through different presets and see what would happen, what kind of look we could go for. Would we have like kind of like blue shadows, more recover the image in the highlights, or would we go for something that is very contrasted and darker, or contrasted but with more shadows? This is something that you want to think about. And also, is it going to be warmer or is it going to be cooler in tones? So
Pierre, let me ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Is this how you would normally start your process when editing your photos? Do you start with your own presets?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. So you don't start with your sliders first. You start by looking at the preset. Can you tell me a little bit why you do it that way?
Yeah, that's a whole reason why I encourage everyone to create their presets, because it helps me guide my creative eye in terms of colors and contrast to match stuff I've done in the past.
Oh, yes.
To match images I've done before, because that's something I've realized, especially around the beginning when I was editing a lot. I could edit 5 images and every time something would be slightly different, especially when you move to one image to another. Then you might miss the blues or the greens a little bit. There's like hundreds of sliders if you count them all. And it's very easy for me to miss something. But here we're going to create our own from scratch, just to show you. But my process really is going through, and first of all, now I know them by heart, all of them. So I know exactly what they do. And I when I'm shooting, I'm going for something that is going to be warm. I'm going to lift the shadows a tiny bit, but not too much in that image. And most importantly, I want to enhance the effect of the light in that photo. And I want to enhance the long shadows that we can see on the floor, because it's something that's going to lead you, really draw you towards the subject right there. So as mentioned yesterday, cropping is for the last. So we're going to do all the edits that I'm going to keep for the preset. Okay. So first of all, the white balance is not going to be used, but you want to fix that. Otherwise your color correction is going to be off after. So it was sunrise, direct sunlight. I'm going to warm it up a tiny bit so I can kind of get the mood I want. So daylight would be at 550, and I think we could go to 600 or 650, and that kind of looks good now. And the second thing I want to do is, because we're clearly underexposed here, is I'm going to bring it up a little bit, and let's go all the way. I want to show you what happens.
Oh, my eyes.
Oh, wow. So what's happening is that clearly, you see, Aaron, if I had shot for the dark part in camera, I would have probably lost all that part.
Probably. Yep, I can see that.
In the highlights. But when I tone it back down, you can actually see that the sky is pretty interesting. You have a layer of clouds
here. Nice.
And so what we can do is bring it up a little bit, not too much, and then we'll play with the highlights and such. But clearly you want to do that. Okay. Now I want to say to everyone, the exposure and the white balance should never be saved in a preset. We'll talk about what to save. But make sure you have your white balance right and your exposure right before you play with presets, which I actually didn't show you. But that's usually I would do those first 2 steps, and then I would start playing to see what happens. Because if you work with an underexposed image, well, it's you want to get to the baseline 0 before you apply anything on it. So that's my baseline 0. I'm kind of happy with it right now. Might bump it a little bit. There we go.
That's a great tip, though, to leave exposure and white balance out of your Lightroom presets. I love that.
Yeah. Then tone curve. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. We're going to add, so I'm going to add a little bit of contrast here. So already drawing down my darker shadows black point. There we go. I think that should look good. And then we're going to bring out a little bit the light, but not too much, because I'm going to really crush those highlights otherwise. So we're going to try to be very subtle here. There we go. And the midpoints right there, which is everything between shadows and highlights, kind of leave it there, because I think that looks good. Now, remember emphasis on those shadows. So we really need to do a good job at that. We might even bring it lower. Here we go. We're going to go for a very contrasted look. And here you could try to lift your blacks if you wanted, but in that image, we won't do it. It's something I would do more, for example, for the shots at night. I kind of like to lift those shadows a little bit at night. It gives more of I don't know, night feel. Maybe I've been a lot influenced by movies that have that, where you have that feeling. Next thing is going to be our highlights. Highlights, we can bring down the highlights here. And what you can see is that—
That's amazing how much dynamic range is in that photo.
Isn't it? That's why I'm like, learning on a cheap camera or on a phone is the best way to get it right, or even on a film camera, because when you have a good camera, a great camera, there's so much room for error that you don't really think about it that much. And I see myself being lazy sometimes, I'm like, oh, oops, I was underexposed by 2 stops, but you can recover. When you're on a cheap camera, you can't recover. So you really have to keep that in mind. Okay, so we're gonna recover a little bit of the highlights, not too much, because this looks, I don't like the look. It looks too HDR-like. And so just a tiny bit, there we go. And then we're going to lift our shadows a little bit, and I'll show you why, just to give a little bit more context into our image, right? If we bring it down, there's very little that we can see right now. So we're gonna lift it up. And next thing are going to be our white points. So whites is really going to work on that like brightest part and the widest part, let's put it. So we can drag it a little bit because I want the rest of the image don't focus too much on that part when you're doing that edit. Focus on the rest of the image, because then you can do local adjustments to come back and compensate and play with that. Next thing, the blacks. If you drag it down, I already dragged it pretty deep here. So you might not want to touch it, or you want to be lifting it up a little bit. There we go. Why do I do those after that? Simply because I find that those have finer adjustments, and it helps me get that curve like tweaked super finely. And I know you can do it here. I think if you press one of the function and then you have like very small increments, but I just find it easier overall to do it there. Next thing we're gonna play with is clarity. Like we saw yesterday, clarity makes everything looks grungy if you go to 100. And if you go to -100, it looks like one of those funny telenovelas that your grandparents used to watch.
It's like
right,
portrait retouching. Yeah, it's like portrait retouching in the 90s. It's like, yeah,
exactly.
Bring it all the way down. What skin detail? We don't want that.
Yeah, no. Why buy a lens if you can actually just add clarity -100? Just shoot with cellophane on front of your $3,000 lens.
Perfect.
So clarity, we're gonna add a little bit. We're gonna be at +10 here, and I kind of want to show you what we have already. So before and after. Okay.
Can you do the side by side before and after, Pierre?
Yes. That's going to look even better. There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
So just this, I would actually be happy with that photo almost like that. If I wasn't if I was in a rush and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, I'm happy. I brought up the exposure. I brought up the highlights, brought down highlights, shadows, whites, blacks. We have something a little bit more contrasted, a little bit more light in that image. And it gives us a good starting point to then go on and try really to bring a little bit more warmth in that image. And also then after add emphasis on our subjects.
I got a question for you from the chat, Pierre. Ferry is asking us, do you ever use split toning to color grade your images?
Absolutely. Split toning is awesome. And in those images at night, I'm definitely gonna use it. In that image right there, I would use it only if I wanted to go for a specific mood. But right now, I'm not going to go too, I will call it cinematic in a way, because I feel like the heavy color grading is really what you see in movies.
Yes. Okay. So we'll get to it later in today's broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So
here, yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday, you remember we talked about HSL versus calibration. And that was a pretty interesting point. Just to recap super quickly, the calibration here, red, green, primary, all the points in your image, all the pixels have information in red, green, and blue. And that is going to change how those pixels are changing. So if we drag down the saturation of the red primary in the calibration, every single pixel that has red in it is going to be affected and losing that red. Versus if we go to the HSL and we drag down the saturation in the red, well, nothing happens because there's no red, visible red, what we call the color red in that image. But if we were to drag down the orange, you will see the sky disappear. The sun, sorry, when completely muted. And so the same thing happens for red, green, and blue. Those are great for presets to work here, specifically because you will be able to emulate the tones you kind of like, or if a camera actually gives you more greenish tints or more blues or more magenta, it depends on your camera. That's where you can actually kind of tweak it, and it will apply to all your images that you use the same thing for.
And I gotta say, Pierre, yesterday we had some comments in the chat. Some folks who were shooting Nikon mentioned that they had a little bit of issues with skin color. Now, I don't want to say that one camera is better than the other, because I think all camera manufacturers are doing a great job personally. But if you do notice that consistently your color shift is just a little bit off, this is where you can fix it. And the fantastic thing is, let's say you did have a slight issue with skin tones where maybe they were coming out a little bit too magenta. You could actually pull back the hue on your red primary just a little bit, and you can apply that preset during import for all your future photos. So if you know you have this slight little issue with your camera, you can fix it here, and then every time you import new photos, it's gonna automatically be fixed, so you don't have to do it again and again.
Yeah, that's the best part about the I find the calibration. And I gotta say, Aaron, this is not easy to tweak. I found those are some of the most difficult to tweak because it's sometimes very, very subtle. So you really have to, if you're trying to dial in your camera right, for example, you really have to think and get different images side by side. For example, full portrait, full landscape with lots of greens, and work on those independently. I did that back in the days when I created those. But right now we're gonna try to find something that kind of work aesthetically. And the red primaries, what you can do also if you don't know what to do is just to move it around and see how you feel about it. Do you want your red to lean a little bit towards the orange more, and then it goes green kind of, I find? Or do you want to go the other way? To be honest, I don't think we have much to do in those. I'm just going to check what happens if I drag down or up the saturation. You see, it does affect the image a lot. And just a little bit of saturation in the red might help me get that warmer tone afterwards. Green primary is also very interesting. Clearly here we're being affected. I'm going to bring it up a little bit towards the greens. No, sorry, that's not green. What is that color on the right?
Let's call it cyan. Yeah,
cyan.
It works.
There we go. And here I'm actually going to bring it down a little bit, because if I bring it up, it makes I find like it makes the orange a little funny. So a tiny bit, there we go. And blue primary, here you can make if you wanted to go for a theme, like maybe you've seen this movie where everything gets green, which usually gives you emotionally that feeling that's of sickness. You feel like there's something how do you call that, unstable, something that is kind of sick, biohazard. If you wanted to do a series around that, this is where
like if you're shooting in an abandoned warehouse or something, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the blue primaries, I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit and drag my saturation down. Here we go. So if we look at before and after, what happens if we turn that off? This is what I'm saying. It's like very, very subtle. And it's actually hard to see sometimes the difference, but you did do something. So, and different people see calls differently, right? Some people are really good at it. Lens correction, you can include it in your preset if you always use it. I would not recommend it simply because it's going to vary. Sometimes you want to use it, sometimes you don't want to use it. But let's just look at what happens if I turn it on. I shot that on the 24mm f1.4, and there is almost no distortion because the lens is great by default. And I want to keep the darker edges. Chromatic aberration, I don't think we can see any right now, even on the high contrast areas. So I don't even have to turn it on. So we can forget about that right now. And then sharpening is details. It's something that a lot of people ask, should you resharpen your images? Yes, no. I kind of prefer to keep that for the end and never include that in a preset. Yet, if I'm doing a preset for nighttime and I know I'm shooting at high ISO, I'm going to play with luminance here in the noise reduction to actually include that and have a base default so that I know that I can recover the noise in those images. Okay, now let's move on to our little HSL here. And that HSL is going to help us give a little bit of a warmer tone, yet not feel too saturated in that image. I'm gonna go back to just that image. Here we go. And the first thing I'm going to do is we're gonna play a little bit with our hue. There we go. And I kind of want to bring it, I don't want to bring it too yellow. I actually prefer it a little bit more red towards the reds than the orange yellow. And then the yellow, you can see, you can change it. Again, this is mainly where the sun is being affected. Green, there is no green, so it doesn't matter what you do here. Again, if you're trying to create a preset that will apply for several images, try to find at least 3 images and retweak those on each image, right? If you're not affecting the green on that image, find another image where there will be green, try to change just the green and see if that matches. And then suddenly you have a preset that's gonna work for images with green and without. You know, it's all about being versatile. Aqua, we have maybe a little bit in the sky. Not really, actually. So blue, here we go. If you wanted to go for the, how do you call that? Those cinematic tones where the blues are cyan and turquoise. So there we go.
Very
That's
popular.
where you could do it. Very popular. So I bring it down a little bit. Purple, I'm not going to change that. Magenta, I'll probably have nothing here. Yep, we've got nothing. And then just saturation. Let's play here. I'm going to bring down, actually, I need to bring up the orange saturation a little bit. But here's a trick. I need to bring down the yellow saturation because why am I doing it that way? It's kind of weird. You could actually try the contrary. Let's see. I want to bring up the warmth in that image, but I don't want to bring up the saturated effect, you know, that kind of looks, I mean, it's not my style. Let's just put it that way. Some people love it. I'm not a big fan. So what I do is I bring down a little bit the yellow saturation here. I'm going to bring up the orange saturation. There we go. A little bit. And then aqua blue, I'm going to bring it down, just not to distract too much, because blue skies can really attract your eye. And again, if you're trying to go here, don't get distracted by that part.
Right. So it's all about creating a focal point with your edits.
Correct. So, and here, this is where you can kind of play as if you had a circular polarizing filter, which I highly recommend if you're shooting in cities and you're getting bored a little bit of always having the same kind of effects. Use a polarizing filter. All the buildings are going to have different types of reflections. Your sky is going to look different. It's really fun. But if you want to emulate the dark blues, you can drag down your luminance here.
Funny story, Pierre.
Tell me.
Last week, we had a crazy double rainbow over the whole city of Chicago. You shot it. I shot it. It was just mind-blowing. And I brought 2 cameras up to my rooftop to shoot. And I had a friend shooting. And I was taking pictures of the double rainbow. And she's looking to the camera. It's like, I don't see the rainbow. And I'm like, she was with a zoom lens. And I'm like, well, you know, just, are you sure you're pointing at the rainbow? And she's like, I'm pointing right at the rainbow. Like, there's a building here and the rainbow is coming out of it. Like, I don't see the rainbow. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't see the rainbow? There was a circular polarizing filter on the lens that I didn't even remember about. And that was something with the rainbow was making it so the camera was not recognizing it at all. Like, literally it was invisible rainbow just for that camera. So it took me a minute and I was like, I think there's a polarizing filter on this. So just a little bit of a heads up. Sometimes it can actually do things that you don't want as well. That was a really trippy situation.
I feel like Aaron's gonna come out with a book called Rainbows Through Polarizers, and then it's just gonna be regular photos, and you're gonna be like, what?
Yeah, it's just nothing at all. It's actually a pretty good series. Yeah, like things that are invisible, just with photos. That's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the reason you didn't see it is because the rainbow is, if I'm correct, is like light diffracting and like reflecting, and the whole point of a polarizer is actually to cut out those, or have only one direction of light go through.
Exactly. So yeah, I guess it had to do with the angle we were at and everything, but yeah, Invisible Rainbows. That's actually a great book title, Invisible Rainbows.
You could even fake it and just shoot in plain day.
Yeah, just
like, oh wait, you didn't see it?
Take a picture in your bathtub. Yep, there's an invisible rainbow here.
All right, luminance. What are we gonna do? We have our blues that I kind of like now. We're going to go play with our reds, but there is no red, so there is no need, Pierre. And orange, we can darken or lighten. And here is where you get your warm feeling. But you see what happens if you go too high? You're losing a little bit the orange in the orange.
You lose the
I may say. Yeah. So you're going to bring it up a little bit, but being mindful. And let's see what happens if we bring up our yellows. And that's where it gets interesting. Look at that area in the image that's being affected. So down. Right. We're like, oh, so weird. Okay. And now up, which means like the center is more like orange and the gradient goes towards the yellows out. So what do you do? Well, it's up to you. I think if you go down, it kind of looks like it's smog and it's not really cool. So there is not really anything I would say about it. It doesn't really matter as long as you don't go negative on it. I think you can go either for like a blown out look a little bit, or you can just try to find a nice point in the middle. So kind of like here for me. And then aqua, we said we don't have any of those. We don't have greens either. But if we had on another photo, that's where you would come back. Split tonic for error. Split tonic for another photo. Now, what do? We're going to save. So let's look at our before and after. And I kind of want to look at before, after. There we go. Without changing the exposure. Why? Just to show you what happens to the photo without like us tweaking the exposure. So before, after, let's go Y. There we go. We can see we have something more contrasted. We brought up some details in the sky. We have a darker sky. And most importantly, I think the shadows are more prominent. So when I bring it back to, I think it was 1.2, here we go. This is our result. Now, we want to save it and reuse it on the next image. Is that correct? So what are we going to do? We're going to go over here. There we go, guys. And we're going to press Create Preset. There we go. And here you can do a bunch of stuff. And that's where you have to be super careful. Not that you're going to regret it for the rest of your life, but you want to make it super helpful. Okay.
Yeah. So and I think the important note here is that when you're creating presets, you want them to work with as many photos as possible. So what the choices you make here will determine how well it's going to fit with a batch of images.
Absolutely. So here, what I suggest to you is to put your name or whatever your studio name, whatever you want, and then maybe why you created that preset and maybe give it a number, okay? And the reason I do that is because after you might want to send it to an editor that's going to edit photos for you if you're doing wedding, and that editor is going to make it easier. You don't want to call it like test 01 because I used to do that. And then one day I was like, gosh, I have no clue what those are. So here we could press Adobe Live and then we could add Sunrise NYC01. Okay, so I kind of have something at the back of my mind as to what kind of mood I'm going for. You could even say warm tones, New York. It's really up to you. Use something, a convention that will be easy to remember. The group, I suggest you to create different groups for different sessions or like different types of edits. Let's just call it Adobe Live for us to make it easy. And actually, yeah, there we go. And then we're going to auto setting is something you could use because it's actually tweaking already some stuff. You see it untick the exposure, and it's trying to take only stuff that are supposed to be repeatable on other photos, but I'd rather do it myself. I'm going to turn off the white balance, like I said, and then I'm turning off the exposure. I'm keeping contrast, highlight, shadows, black, white, clipping, tone curves, texture, clarity, dehaze, sharpening. I would suggest keeping it just so you have a default, and whenever you adding it to another image, but if you didn't tweak it, it doesn't matter much, but just keep it just in case you added noise reduction for your night photos. Color, vibrant, saturation, color adjustments. Yes. Split toning, we didn't do any, but you want to include it because that's going to give a certain look in your image. Those filters, nope, because having those actually is not the best. It doesn't translate anyway. You can't really choose it right now because I didn't add any. Noise reduction is something you could add, and then lens correction. If you do the lens correction automatically and you want always to apply it to your images, then you would do those two: lens profile correction and chromatic aberration, because those are automatic and they will work no matter what lens you're using. They will adapt to that lens. Okay, so if you're using that 24 millimeter 1.4 and then you're moving to an 85 millimeter 1.8 and you're applying the same preset, the software will apply it for 85, not for 24 millimeters. So it will adjust. But right now we don't have any, so I don't even have to worry about that. Transform is for getting our lines right. I don't use it because, again, your geometry will change depending on the photos. Effect, post-crop, vignetting, and grain. Absolutely. Because the grain, for example, if you're adding grain, that's going to be part of your style that you want to be adding in those images. Process, version, and calibration, yes and yes. And I think if you don't put process version, there is a warning that comes up and it says you might get different visual results. So of course you want to put it. And that is interesting. I think that came out recently where you can have
it's new.
ISO adaptive presets. Then you can press learn more and discover by yourself.
Yeah, what is that?
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so it's supposed to be adjusting based on if you're using like certain threshold of ISO, it's going to add, for example, certain noise reduction. I haven't played around with it too much yet, Aaron, to be honest.
I haven't used it too. It's a brand new feature.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try, for example, on the star presets I created for Astro. But for now, let's press create. And dun, dun, dun. Here we go. We've got a little preset that is here. So we're super happy. We can send it to our editor, send it to our friends, or if you want to sell it, you can sell it too. But most importantly, you have something that is consistent with that idea, with that photo. Now we're going to try to...
Pierre, can I interrupt you for just 1 second? I'm curious about the whole selling presets business / like, how do you do it? Is it worth it? Can anyone do this? Like, what would you suggest for like setting up a storefront? Can you just kind of take us through like a brief explanation of where you found yourself with the whole Lightroom presets as a marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting question. Actually, a lot of people are asking that. And well, my advice when it comes to do you want to sell presets or not, it really depends on you and the type of work you do. Some photographers do never want to share anything about their tweaks, right? They're very secretive about it, and they think that if someone else uses, they're going to copycat their whole work. I don't really believe in that. I mostly believe in preset helped me at the beginning of my career because it helped me understand all those tweaks that could be done, right? The day I discovered actually, for example, those calibrations was when I used presets that were emulating film. And I was like, wow, this is how you get to do those things with colors that is like not the HSL. And that's where I find a lot of value in getting other people's presets. Now, if you want to sell your own, you have many different options. You can put them on your photographer's website as, for example, a product. You can have specific websites like Selfie. Maybe you can even have them on your Adobe Behance site with a link or something where people can grab them. What I would suggest is if you want to sell yours is make sure they're usable for as many photos and as many cameras as possible. It's very important. I've seen a lot of presets. I've had a lot of friends who bought presets and literally people became orange in the photos or green, or it just looked very, very bad because that worked really well for one photo, but it didn't apply for another photo. And most importantly, a different camera, it just crushed everything. That's why I'm putting a lot of emphasis in what exactly you're tweaking in that image. And can you replicate it onto another image like we'll see on that one? And what would you change on that second image that wouldn't affect the first one? That's important. That way you can create something that will affect as many images positively as possible without bringing down anything about it. Should you sell yours, you might want to have some kind of audience or people interested in it. I heard, and you can even put them on Etsy also and create a storefront on Etsy and just start selling those. For example, if you have a lot of clients and they're into photography themselves, sometimes, wedding photographers' clients want to edit their photos that they take with their family in the future. And they're going to be like, hey, I really love your editing style. I play with Lightroom. Can I get your presets? That's also an option.
So take us through the process of exporting your presets out. You don't have to actually do it, but let's just talk about you just showed us how to make a preset, which is fantastic. So just talk about the next steps from okay, how do you take these from Lightroom to an actual product that we can then sell?
Okay, so let's say we created that Adobe Live pack. We currently have one preset. We're gonna add more after. What you would do is right click and export group. What it will do is it's going to create a zip file with the presets in it, right? So let's call it Pierre T Lambert Adobe Live, and we're gonna save it in the downloads. Here we go, or on your desktop if you want. There we go. And it's going to create that file, and now we see it. It is right there on my desktop. And what happens is that this file, you can send it to anyone. You can put it in your shop, and this is what people will receive. So if you have a website, for example, if you go on mine right there, and and then you go to the editing presets, when you're going to purchase them, you will receive that zip file, right?
Yes.
And with that zip file, you will then come back. So you will download it. So for example, that one has 30 presets. Then you're going to be downloading, oops, I pressed by mistake. You're going to download it on your computer, and you're going to press import presets. And here you will select the zip file, import it, and enable because it's already there. So
it's already there. Perfect.
Basically, it would appear here, and that's where you can play with the presets. Always, here's a quick trick. If you can't see your presets or you're confused why they're not showing up, 2 things to check. Manage presets, and then make sure they're ticked, because as you can see, I have other presets and they are not ticked. I don't want to see them here. And second of all, in Lightroom Classic and even in Lightroom CC, there is a little button that says show partially compatible developed presets. There's been a change between Lightroom, I think 6 and 7 and now, where some presets would not show up for JPEG images. You couldn't apply them, but now you can. You just have to tick that box, and that's basically what happens. So export the zip file and then have anyone who gets it imported that way.
That's perfect. So then the only thing that's really left is putting them on a marketplace, and you can use Etsy, you can use your own website, you can use Shopify. There are many different platforms that you can use to create your own, sales platform. And then really, I think it's all about marketing and telling people, because if you've got a product on your website and no one knows about it, you're not going to get many sales. But if you're telling people, can you talk through that as well? Because I know a lot of us as artists are a little bit concerned with I don't want to make it seem like I'm selling to all my people. I don't know how to navigate those waters, because I don't want to come across as too commercial or too salesy or too pushy, but they still want to be able to make money as an artist, and they have a lot of value to give. Can you kind of tell people your approach in how you sell products, but still feel like you're your genuine self as well?
Feel like I still have my soul.
Yeah, exactly. How do you do it?
Good question. I will say I did struggle with it at the beginning, just because I don't know why, but with that vision of artists should, I mean, at least for me, it was like artists almost should be struggling financially. And because we live from for our art, and like selling something is seen as negative. But actually, the moment you see that you're exchanging your time and your savoir-faire, your basically knowledge for other people who don't want to put in that time, it's you're just exchanging those hours that you put out for money. And money is just a tool. It's not something that you are trying to amass as billions just to sit in a bank. It's a tool for you to live your life, to be able to do your creative projects, to be able to buy new gear, and to progress in life as an artist, and also to sustain your family. So if you can have a different stream of income as a photographer nowadays, especially when there are rough times like a pandemic hits and you can't go out to do your shoots outside, but you can either do education or you can show people how to use preset, how they can purchase them. That really helps you as a creator. It helps you bridge that gap when times are difficult, and it can help you go further. How do you sell it without finding salesy? Just show before after. You almost don't have to say anything about it, right? You're like, this is how I edited that photo. I used the preset Tokyo Osaka 03. And then people are probably going to be wondering, oh, what's preset Osaka 03? And they will find it by themselves. Or you can just give them a link or whatever you want. You don't have to be like, guys, buy my presets now because you have to support artists in that difficult time. No, I mean, that's not a good reason for anyone to buy. It's more like, I love my presets. I use them every single day. If you're interested in trying to edit in a similar style or have a good basis to edit, just try them out. That's it. You go get a coffee, get presets instead tomorrow.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think, a lot of us do want to support the artists and creatives that we follow online. We know that, I mean, just no matter what industry you're in, like you have to earn a living to be able to support yourself and your family. So I think, like we would never expect to go to a doctor's office and have them give us treatment for free, right? Like, because they're an expert in their field, they're trading their time and their energy, and compensation is a part of that. And I think as creatives, just kind of understanding and, believing that your time has value as well. And that, if someone wants some of your time, you are a professional, compensation is in order there. So personally, it's also something I've struggled with over the years, but at this point, it's like, if I'm going to provide value, then I have, I feel good about, if I can feel good about providing value, then I can feel good about getting something in return. It's not about like, I'm trying to scam anyone or, anything like that. It's like, let's make sure that you're getting what you want. And, if I went out for a coffee this morning, and I paid for my coffee. I would never ask for it for free. I wanted the coffee.
You paid? You didn't exchange it for likes?
And it was my friend's coffee shop. Also, I'm good friends with the owner of the coffee shop, but still I pay for the coffee because they have to pay for the coffee too. So I think, as creatives, it's totally okay. And I think it's actually a really good thing to start building up that part of you that says it's okay to start selling my products. It's okay to start charging my services, because at the end of the day, it can actually help you get better as an artist. And as you get better, you can provide more value for more people.
Oh, 100%. And I think you're touching on a very, very important point. You want to make whatever it is, whether it's a template for something, whether it's a preset, whether it's a class, it's a workshop in person. If you genuinely think, and you have to be honest with yourself, that you did your best and that this is really a highly valuable product for the user, you shouldn't feel bad about exchanging it for money, because they're saving time or they're getting your time, and it's a normal exchange. Think about whenever you bought something that was so helpful and that you were like, you know what, I would have paid twice as much for that because it's so helpful, That's exactly the kind of mentality you want to be in whenever you get something. And if you buy an $800 phone, don't feel bad if you're selling a $30 preset. I don't think you should, because it's something that people are going to be using in the craft, and that will help them throughout life and not change it in a year. So
exactly. And you're also, Pierre, you've been shooting for many years, and you've developed yourself as an artist for all of this time. So they're not just paying for the time that it takes you to make those presets, they're also paying for all of the education and experience and the hours and the dedication that you put in as an artist. That experience is helping you craft that product, and that has a lot of value as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's like you in Photoshop tutorial. We're not watching Aaron for his last 10 minutes of knowledge. We're watching Aaron for his 10 years of Photoshopping.
Thank you very much, Pierre.
That's the good part about anything, is focusing on how far people have come from to actually get there. Okay, so we have our preset now.
Oh, it looks like we've
light, because it's about later in the day, I think.
Could you repeat that for just a second, Pierre? I think your stream cut out very briefly.
Oh yeah,
but you're good now.
Okay, so that second image is a little bit at a different time. It's 2 p.m. in full January, which means it's almost sunset. Maybe in like 2 hours, we're gonna lose the sun. So first, we're starting with something different, where we had very low sun with golden hour. Here, we're not having yet that golden hour, but we're very close. So we'll see what the preset can do to us and to that image. First of all, I'm going to tweak a little bit, like I said before, exposure, bring it up. Let's go all the way just to see what we have in our image. That's something I recommend everyone. Like if you shot a little bit dark, just look what's in your image at the bottom. What do you want to bring out? So there we go. About 0.5 should be interesting. And the rest of the work will be with the with highlights after. And then next thing, as we mentioned, or first thing, as you want, is that warmth with the white balance. And here is interesting. You can get closer to sunset tones, right? Just by making it warmer. So now it's getting cool. And look at those really consume. But look at the awesome colors we have here. It's kind of a golden or like bronze. And so having something warm kind of like matches, I find, really well here. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to apply our preset now. And just when you hover over it, you're like, ooh, wow, that's cool. Now, can we do, one sec, my button is funny. Tac. So if we press, oops.
You could turn off your Pro mouse if you want.
You think that's it?
I think it might be.
No. One sec. We're going to restart Lightroom.
There we go.
Super quickly.
The old, the secret trick of shut it off and turn it back on.
Start it again.
And they get another look at your presets. There we go.
There we go. By the way, so for your presets, you can have them on your mobile. You just have to import them in Lightroom CC or Lightroom normal now, and they will be synced with your mobile, which is awesome when you're editing on the go. And if you don't have the full subscription, you can create your own presets straight from the mobile also. If you don't have the sync.
Where is this building? Jan Eric is asking, is this in Tokyo also?
No, that's New York City, and this is one of the new building in the Hudson Yard, and it's just a piece of art, to be honest. Its sole purpose is just to be beautiful there. I think I can show you a little bit.
It's an Instagram building.
It is the Instagram building, 100%. And this is really a good building. This is what it looks like.
Oh wow! Look at this. So many pictures.
Yeah,
ooh, let's see some of those Pierre model shots there.
So that's the building, and you can really play with it.
Wow.
So there's a lot to be done. Those are like edited shots, but whether you want to be in the center or you want to be on the sides, I mean, so much you can play around with, or outside, or even further out. Yeah, I really like that building. It's really cool.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yes, I love New York.
Yeah, New York is like paradise for photos.
Apparently, our Project Runway did a fashion show there. Hello, I would love to see that.
Oh, nice. All right, so let's do a reference with that photo. We're gonna, oops, we're gonna here. There we go. So that reference view really helps put the photo that you did, for example, with the same series. If you want to match the same tones, you're gonna put it on your left. That way you can compare it to what you're working on and really get as close as possible to the same tones, especially if you're going for that Instagram feed that is very consistent in tones, where you like kind of matching tones. This is what you want to do. I'm gonna be honest, I suck at having matching tones on Instagram. I have matching style, which is good, but the tones, I'm not there yet, just because I do so much work on YouTube and I want to share also as I shoot what I shot. And if I had to match it every time, that would be almost impossible. All right, let's apply that preset and see what happened. Okay, so let's look at a little before after. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we have, first of all, like all those parts are like kind of shining now. They're shining through a little bit. Our sun is a little bit warmer. We get more details in the sky, and that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play around with that, maybe increase a little bit the light, and then we're going to tweak a little bit the shadows just to give more. And here the clarity, which I would hardly ever go above 10, might actually really help. And I'll show you why, guys, because it's going to affect those shiny parts of the building. Look at that. Look at what's happening.
Cool.
Looks really cool. So what you can do if you don't want to affect what's behind it and just really make it shine, is that's where you're going to use that preset as a base. Now you're going to go and do local adjustments.
Yes, with your adjustment brush. Perfect.
Yeah, and we'll talk about cropping and that later. But for now, let's paint. Okay, when you press O, you can see where you're painting. And I'm painting absolutely everywhere here. And people are like, no, why?
Don't do it, Pierre.
And the reason is simply that we're going to use my favorite thing, which is range mask. And we're going to choose, we'll see which one works best here, but we can try with color. And we're going to pick the color that we want to be affected, right? And we're going to try to pick probably around here. There we go. And see what happens. There we go. As you can see, just that part of the image has been affected. There we go. So we only have that part right there. We have a little bit of the background still, so we can change the feather to see if we can get just the shiny ochre point. Now, we can add also more colors. Oops, there we go. No, by pressing Shift, and then you can add different colors. There we go. I think that one is off. And now we can see, now you can also can you remove colors? I can't remember.
Not in that way, no.
Not in that way. That's right. So,
but you can erase them with your adjustment brush.
Yes. So we're gonna pick it again. That looks good. We have very little in the background, and now we're gonna zoom in.
Pierre, can you remind us how to change your mask color? Because you've got it as green right now.
Yeah. So Shift O is going to change the mask color from red to green to white, and it's really helpful depending on the image you're working on, right?
Great.
And we're gonna add that color too. There we go. Let's see what it looks like if I zoom out. Poof. There we go. I kind of like it. I think we'll have to brush off a little bit the background here. So, or you could do luminance, but here it's not the most interesting. So erase right there, and we're gonna bring down the tool, make it a little bit smaller, and we're gonna erase that. Why am I erasing it? Just because it's kind of gray, and that's not what I want to pop. I don't want, because it's already separated from the background, right? In a way, you want the background to be further out. So maybe I'm even gonna reduce the flow a little bit, just not to be too harsh here. And I'm going to paint negatively on those areas. Here we go. Just because that silver building is really gonna pop out if we leave it with the clarity slider. So pretty good. All right, let's see what that looks like. And now that we have a selection, we can start playing with sliders. So let's see what happens. Oop, you see what happens? It's pretty cool, no? It's like really shining. So before we go to clarity, we're going to try to do it with the highlights. Why the highlights? Because you might have seen at one point it just washes out things. So you want to try with highlights first. And there is a fine balance where if you want to keep the color, sometimes you actually reduce the highlights and increase, for example, something like whites, or do the contrary. But in that case, I think we can increase a little bit those highlights, and we're going to reduce a little bit the whites, and we will increase also the shadows. You see, boom, it really brings it out. And we can reduce the blacks, which in a way kind of does the same thing as clarity, I think, when you adjust them all like that and you add a little bit of contrast, but it still does it differently. So you have more control over everything. And then you can go add a little bit of crispiness, either through the texture or through clarity. I kind of like that. Let's look at what that does. You see, it makes that building kind of like shine out, right? Now, if you look at the left image and the right image, we still have, I think, tonal problems where this is cooler than that one a little bit, especially around our sun. So what we'll do is we're going to take not a brush, but our radial tool, and we're going to create a nice circle here. There we go, a big circle. And the goal, and Aaron, I remember seeing you edit on Photoshop like years ago, an image where you created literally a fake spotlight, and that was pretty awesome on Photoshop with like a monster in the street. So you just
I remember that.
Bump up your highlights a little bit, bump up your exposure. There we go. And here we're going to play and add a little bit of warmth into our sun, but not too much. Again, you want to be careful, because let's say you do it like that, then it doesn't match the rest of the sky, right? So you want to be careful. You want to make it as wide as possible on the first round. There we go, to kind of affect the whole image. And now we're going to duplicate it. So I just duplicated. You just right click and press duplicate. And the second one, you want to make it smaller. There we go. So when you shift and grab a point, you can actually change the whole circle, right? If you take just one side, it's going to affect, for example, the width or the height. But here, if you press shift at the same time, it's going to affect both. Why do I do that? I want to make that sun a little bit more prominent again. And there we go. I'm going to reduce a little bit the highlights here. And I'm going to reduce the exposure, sorry. Increase the highlights and drop a little bit the whites. And drop the shadows a little bit. And now I'm going back to the high exposure. I'm doing it in different steps just so I can see what I'm doing. And at any point, I can remove one of those. If I don't want it, for example, if I don't like the second circle I did, the second radial filter, I can always remove it, deactivate it, and be like, you know what, it's too much. But if you do everything at once, then it gets a little complicated. So we're getting pretty good here. I kind of like it. Now, I think we have a little bit more we could do in that image, which is simply working on, for example, or cropping. And we're going to be working also on bringing everything a little warmer. So we're going to go down in our HSL and see what we could be tweaking, especially in the saturation ward. So if we increase our yellows, you can see it gets a little bit more yellow, which matches a little bit more, but it's not too pretty. And then we're going to bring a little bit more orange. And you see the whole building is affected here. It's pretty cool actually to see those different layers, even all the way to the bottom. So bring it up a little bit more. And for me, I'm kind of happy with that, so that if I had to share those images separately, I would feel that there is some kind of consistency. Obviously, we're talking about a different sun, so you can only do that much. But I think you're it's pretty well. It's not like you were doing a like completely blue tones versus orange, which could be good complementary, but right now you're trying to more color match. So let's go back to one image. Can you show us the
before and after with that one? Oh,
yes.
There we go.
So pretty big difference. Now
we're going
to crop it, and I kind of want to make it a little bit straighter and bring it a little bit here, and tag. It's just very subtle, but I feel like some elements needs to be aligned. Look at the bottom here, those two lines. I kind of want to have them completely symmetrical. There we go. And I want that one to be almost perfectly centered, which is, we're almost there. Almost there. There we go.
You can change your crop overlay as well. Could you show everyone the keyboard shortcut for that?
Press R and then press O. And now you can run through different overlays. There we go.
Now you got a good center line with that one.
Like the cross is pretty cool.
There we go. Yep. Perfect.
And then you can even use your keyboard. And if you press shift and left and right, it's going to make big jumps. But if you just press left and right, it's going to make small adjustments. So that's always something good to know. Or you can do it like that. There we go. Oh, by the way, I learned something, I will say fairly recently, in the brush tool word. If you press, let's say you're brushing somewhere, right? Okay. But you want to do it in a straight line. What I discovered is that you can press shift and then you go down and it's going to force you in that straight line. You see, I'm going sideways, it doesn't do it. So same, if I go like that, I can't do anything in that direction. So it's pretty cool, especially if it works for the brush. It also works for the, what do you call that one? Spot removal. It's great because you'll be able to really get the parts that, for example, if you have a cable in the sky and it's like kind of difficult to draw it perfectly straight, well, you just press shift and it really, really works well. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that image. Maybe I'll bump a little bit my exposure just to see after. But I will say I'm really pleased with that. So we have two images that have used the same preset. We have the same base, and the light is a little bit different, but that's why it's so interesting to see the result, because you do get something that is, I will say, a little consistent in the tones, but at different times. Now, we are going to move to another image.
Were you going to crop the first image, Pierre? You mentioned that the buildings were not as interesting.
Totally forgot. Yes. Actually, that one I might do pretty drastic crop. I don't want the buildings. I don't think they add much. Now I have to make a creative choice. Do I want to center my subject like that? Or do I want to actually use the shadows to be really leading me in? And now people are like, wait, why did you shoot at 24 if you're cropping that much? Well, this is where you have range with 40 megapixels or bigger cameras, because I like to play with the image after. So when I shot it, it just happens in front of your eyes. I don't have the luxury of having the time to change lens. I cannot run towards them, because look, this is a half second to the right and I'm done. Like, they're hiding the sun. I actually have that series in shots I can show you. If you move by half a second, it's over. So let me show you actually.
Yeah, let's see the behind the scenes here. Let's see all the shots that didn't make the cut.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, so this is when it started. I was on the street and then I moved to the side road and then I saw them come and I'm like, that's cool. But the shadow, if you can see here, is actually, let's see, let's increase a little bit the exposure here. There we go. The shadow is still in the shadow part also of the street. So they're like kind of merging. It's kind of, I find that they're a little bit more difficult to spot. And then you move to that shot and that's where you can see them more easily, you know, because, and then you have another shot where they're completely hidden. The sun is completely hidden, which is also an interesting shot because suddenly that wheel is split from the background here, you know. It was a little split. And again, it's all about making that subject stand out. So if the wheel is on the darker side, you see it less. But if it comes more on the lighter side, you see it more. And people will pop out like that. But I kind of like having the sun that really grabs the attention.
It's nice,
and
yeah.
Half a second later,
very different
the
shot.
sun is, and now you don't see the kid. The story is a little bit more confusing. The shadows are like all over the place on that side. So that's why you can see 3 stars and 1 star. 1 star, 0 star, 3 star. It's basically how I selected those. So that's our photo. And the crop is like that. So Aaron, let's do 2 crops, okay? Or 3.
Great.
You ready?
Oh, and I get to choose?
Yeah.
And
so,
everyone at home choose as well. So get get ready.
So right click, create virtual copy, or create virtual copy, or you press Command and apostrophe. Now we are having a few different copies. Here we go. I think we have 2. Let's start. We're gonna do.
I'm
one
gonna close my eyes here.
Okay, close your eyes. I'm going to do a drastic one. Everyone watching, you guys are in. You are in the secrets. So we're gonna do a very drastic change.
You guys can see, I cannot.
And then we're gonna add a little bit more context here.
I feel like an art director now.
Ooh, yeah, there you go.
You get to do all the work, and I just choose which one I like.
And we're gonna play.
Not saying that's what art directors do, but.
And we're gonna play also with that, guys. I just wanted to show you. Don't tell Aaron now.
Don't tell
me. We changed that tool, and I'll show you after what it did. But you can see kind of what happened in those buildings. So, boom. Let's go back in. Let's do a pre-check before we show Aaron. So 1.
Make it good, Pierre.
And we're gonna do one last with like original, just to show you. Boom. And actually, let's do that one.
I'm getting nervous.
Are you?
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, no, let's leave it completely original so we can show. All right, press N, and now you can see all the different images together.
And for survey view, I love this view.
Aaron is going to open his eyes in 5 seconds. Aaron, ready?
Count me down, Pierre. Count me down.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Whoa, I like the second one.
Second one?
Yeah.
Boom. There we go, guys. That is exactly how you choose an image.
you just call Aaron and have him close his eyes and choose the one. Let's see. Exactly. Cody Bear votes for number 3. Krishna votes for number 3. Yes, everyone's got their different votes going on too. I love this. It's so much fun. We got so much interaction going on here.
I know, it's awesome.
It seems like I'm maybe the only one who chose number 2.
And that is the beauty of art, right? Everything works for different people. What I want to show you here is I could go for number 3 or number 2.
Yes.
I do like number 1 if I had to do a big print, and I would just like straighten up maybe the buildings, but then I would cut them out at the same time. So, and that would end up kind of like that shot. So what I want to say is I want you guys to look at details in that particular shot, and then the first one. Let's go. That light here hitting on that car and those cars does add a little bit to my like scene overall. When I cut it out in number 2, it helps refocus really on that part, right? So you don't get distracted too much here. And on number 3, it's a little bit there, and that part I would think could be like maybe it's off because it's just a tiny bit and it doesn't really add much in my image right now. It almost feels like it's a mistake, right? And last thing I forgot to show you is when you have strong shadows like that, I highly recommend you to take your brush tool and make them darker. So go here. There we go. Take those shadows and bring down the shadows a little bit. Then take the range mask, luminance, and only affect the dark part. You can press Option and only affect the dark part of that image. There we go. And that way you can really make those blacks a little bit black. There we go.
Yeah, really make it stand out.
Mm-hmm. So those are our 2 final images. We're gonna move towards something more underground and nighttime.
Looking good.
which
In
should be
about 10
fun.
minutes, Pierre, we're going to be doing our daily creative challenge. So if anyone hasn't submitted their entries, go ahead and do so on Discord. We're going to be reviewing those entries in 10 minutes.
Ooh, fun. Can't wait to see those. The underground, let's go. Nighttime, sorry. Why don't we start actually with one of a preset I know, because we don't have to tweak everything. And we're going to work more on the look with split toning in that image and what we could do to actually get something cinematic here. So let's choose it together. First thing we said was actually getting my white balance a little bit cooler because it's nighttime here. If you're shooting at night, dial in your camera at like 3000 Kelvin, go in the streets and you'll see it's super fun. The whole world changes. You don't have those yellow lights. Everything kind of becomes blue, futuristic, and a little bit more light. There we go. Now we're gonna go for we're gonna take Osaka, or today I kind of like, yep, let's go for Osaka 01. There we go. So I have a base here, and now this is how I work. I'm like, okay, I kind of like that, but not too much. There's stuff that I want to improve. So I'm going to come back here, increase a little bit my light. I could be like, oh, that's okay. But no, we want to make it specifically cinematic. And you see like that preset, for example, has tons of adjustments to all the colors. But what happens is that we have very few colors, because if you were to turn that off, there's not that much that's changing, you know, in the HSL, right? So that's kind of important to remember. Again, is like you don't always need to change those HSL. Just because a slider exists doesn't mean you have to tweak it.
That's totally true. Yeah. And I think in general, subtle is the way to go with your edits.
Correct. I said never crop first, but this is an example where you would crop first because you already know you will never uncrop or change the ratio. Actually, there's very little to be done. Look, 0.07 angle just to get those lines in the background to be completely horizontal. So visually, it looks good. You can also, I think, take that tool and then you're going to draw that line and it's going to make it supposedly, if you get it right, which is the whole game. Oh, wow, look at that. When you press Option, you get that funny grid to show up. And now, there we go. I think that's how I would want it. Boom. Now it's perfect. Okay, we have a basis. We kind of have the color. Before we move on to our HSL, let's tweak our light a little bit, because we really want to emphasize on the girl being on her phone. So what we'll do is radial filter, increase a little bit the shadows here, increase a little bit the exposure, not by much, make it kind of wider, shift and drag. There we go. Now we're going to duplicate it and we're going to make it smaller right there. And again, you're trying to recreate that halo with the light, okay? And we're going to bring down the highlights, bring up the shadows, and here I'm going to change a little bit the warmth. So I could actually go opposite to the rest of the background and make it warmer, or I can kind of tone it the same way, like kind of cooler. There we go. And we're going to increase a little bit the clarity just to give a little bit of a crispier aspect right there. So not the big change, but it's important. Then I'm going to take that, what do you call that? Gradient filter, and we're going to go here. Actually, we don't even need to take that. Let's take our brush, and we're going to take a big brush. Whoops, a little bit too big. I got carried away with the brush. There we go. And we're going to paint all around like that because we want to refocus the attention right there. So we're going to drop the shadows.
Do you ever use post-crop vignetting?
Yes, but I don't like it. So I don't really use it. The answer is I don't really use it because, I don't know, it just looks so geometrical. I feel like
it's like too perfect.
It's too perfect. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, meh. It's kind of weird. You can see
Got
that
it.
image is, by the way, very dark. And that person is actually still in the darkness. And we have a little bit of noise also. 12,800 ISO. Oops, sorry. 12,800 ISO. And I think something happened here. I think I pressed the wrong button. There we go. 12,800 ISO, 1/250 of a second. That wasn't necessary, but it was just how I was dialed in my camera. And it's one of those scenario where you're just passing by and you need to get the shot. So forget about your settings for a second. That's where noise reduction can come in handy. And I would put it around, let's say 25, or you see the big difference in the image right there. Suddenly it got a lot more smooth. And then we're going to add sharpening. And I heard a rule of thumb one day, which was like, you take luminance and you do 100 minus your luminance and you go for the sharpening. And then you do masking to an amount that works well for you. So by pressing Option and shifting it, you will be able to see what area is affected by the sharpening. So all the image or just the most important. And that's what you want, is really to affect just that part. Okay. So we have our image, we have all the details, the light is pretty good. Now the final tweaks are going to be split toning. I kept it final.
Here, would you mind zooming in to 100% and showing us the before and after with the
details?
Yeah, I'd like to see how that noise reduction worked.
So that's before, and then that's after. It's loading up. Huge difference.
Wow, it's a huge difference, huh?
We recovered a lot in those blacks, yeah.
Wow.
12,800 is not a danger zone for me, but whenever you have real blacks and you want to bring them out, that's where you have to be very careful. So always kind of play around with those. And Aaron, I don't know about you, I don't tweak a lot detail and contrast or even color, because I feel like it doesn't do as much as just my luminance most of the time. I don't really see too much of an impact in the image.
Yeah, same here. I generally just luminance.
Yeah. So now split toning. What mood are you going for? That's where it's interesting. So we have highlights, balance, and shadows. Your highlights, basically what it's going to say is, do you want to add any kind of color into that highlight part? Here's our highlight in that image, okay? So for example, if I go here and I increase saturation, we're going to be adding red. Let's go all the way just to show you what happens. We're adding red or blue or magenta just in those highlights. And that's where you can kind of create some vibe. You know, if you wanted to go Black Mirror style, you might probably go like on the blues and be like something kind of grungy, futuristic, where like it's very cold. You feel like that person is very lonely, and then you might increase the reflection in the glasses, and then you write a title like "Social Media Kills" or whatever. But if you want to stay a little bit more realistic, you can just like tweak down your saturation. Now the balance is going to be like, do you want more emphasis, if I'm correct, on the highlight or on the shadows? Like if you want one to be more prominent than the other, or do you want them to be equally affected? Shadows, for me, what I like to do in those images is going to bring the shadows, bring a little bit of that blue tones in those shadows that you see a lot in movies, actually. And especially at night, it's kind of interesting. So this is what happens. It's affecting only the shadow area, as you can see. It's affecting a little bit the face because there are shadows around the nose, around the glasses, but it's affecting less. And if you wanted to tweak how much of it would be affected, you see, if you move the slider to your right, less and less of the higher light part, like highlight part, is affected. So right now, let's leave it here. Let's go back down and let's play with something kind of bluish, right? That's pretty happy with that. Let's look at before, after. You see that little cinematic mood there? Boom. Now we could add a little bit of orange if we want. Let's see what it does. There we go. That's green. That's ugly. That's magenta. That doesn't work. There we go. So we're gonna go about here. And now, actually, I like to go all the way just to see what I'm doing. And you can also press here and really like pick the color you want, by the way. You don't have to be doing just a slider. You can literally go from 0 in the saturation all the way up. That's very precise. And you can have previous colors that you used, which is helpful again to have something consistent. But let's try to go for some subtle orange. There we go. And actually I want to bring down. Here we go. So with my split toning, this is what I would get in that image. I would get that blue tone, which I kind of liked, and it really gives that a nighttime feeling to it.
That's looking really good, Pierre. I love that. Can we just see a before and after with the split toning?
Yes. So that's whole before after with the whole image. And just
oh, wow. That's a huge difference, huh?
Yeah. And just the split toning also makes a big difference. Let's look at it before, after on the whole image.
Wow.
And just the split toning. There we go. So,
I love that.
And here it really depends what you want. You know, maybe you're going to come back in an hour and be like, oof, it's a little bit too blue. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. It's all about what kind of mood you're going for. And there is no bad or wrong. It's up to you. Don't judge other people. If they oversaturate their photos, just tell them, I hope you like your work. And voila.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, Pierre, thanks so much. We are going to go ahead and jump into today's daily creative challenge. We're working with grayscale and color. So it'll take just a second here while there we go. While we just jump on over to our daily creative challenge to review our entries. Kathleen Martin was showing us how to work with grayscale as well as color this morning. So let's go ahead and take a look at Kathleen's image so she can show us where she started with. I apologize, it sounds like they're doing some yard work right outside of my house. But here we can see really, really great use of black and white and color. So you can see our photograph was color originally. And part of it has been turned black and white. And we have a really great composition here as well. All right, looks like Ferry just submitted this image, a super cool image. Looks like we've got a car in, I wonder what city this is. I'm loving these old cathedrals, it's beautiful. And I'm wondering if this is a composite photo as well, but we've got a really nice transition between color on the left and black and white. Looks like we've got a little Ferrari symbol here on the bottom and a cool sun flare as well. So just a lot of different techniques coming together to create this image. Really, really well done. All right, next we've got our, oh, looks like Kathleen updated and she's got a new version. Looks really good. Subdued Aurora, an outer open wall peers at the perfect mind. Looks like we've got some poetry as well. How beautiful. I love this. I love the patterns and colors she used on the top of this image. And it looks like Kirsty, fantastic, is actually using the same image. So she's drawing some inspiration, and we've actually got this image in a series. So transition between black and white and color, really, really well done. I love how you're doing a series here, and it looks like maybe we have a swirl here or some wings. Really cool job playing with texture as well. And I think this is a great opportunity to note that, you know, as we're creating work, you can use things like Adobe Stock to kind of just play around and have fun and get to know the tools without necessarily having to purchase anything. So, you know, stock image websites can be really great for using assets in your final, but if you just want to work with them temporarily, this is a really great place to just use those previews. All right, looks like we've got Abdullah submitted from day one. So we've got we reviewed some of these entries yesterday. So this is basically creating a magazine cover. Really great job. I love how we have our subject here running and then a silhouette of the subject and all the type over top of it. Very, very well done. I love the use of colors too. The green in the background works really well. All righty, and here we've got our EXP Love. Fantastic. So this is for our magazine as well. So it looks like we've got a front and a back. So if you split this in half, we would see the right side is the front and the left side as the back. So many great entries here. Mac Matt, this is also in the same challenge. Page 6, still to come, splashdown. Really cool. I love blending this splash texture with your subject. And it looks like we've got a fun custom brush going on here that's mixing your black and white with color. And I love this fun frame that you made as well. Super creative. Love the use of colors here. All right. And we've got, man, you guys are doing great with creating these magazines. Looks like, using this grid here. So we've got page 5, page 6. We've got our air show performance, flying information, some people here in the foreground. Really, really well done. Let's see, we've got Dorina, our exercise magazine here, just with some placeholder text. I apologize about all the sounds outside of my house right now. Busy Chicago day. But I love this, before and after panel. Placeholder text is very important, and negative space as well. So we can imagine, what that would actually be in the final layout. And
it's a good image that's shot with intention for the text.
Yep, I completely agree. Having room for text really does help, especially if you are going to be shooting anything for editorial. You always want to make sure to have extra room for additional elements like text. We've got a couple of cutouts here. When nothing goes right, go left. I love that. 365. I love how you cut your subject out, created a shadow here, and then you kind of got them going outside of the border. And then next, we've got by the same author here, the same 365 magazine. Oh, this is super cool. How you have your subject kind of coming out of a circle here. Again, nice job with the cutout. And then we've got basically the same pattern that was cut out, rotated 90 degrees to create a little bit of a graphic element there. Really cool entries. I'm loving these. Here are some entries from Ken. Very poignant current political events going on. So some protests here and a nice mix of images here, and interesting use of black and white and color as well. All right, looks like we maybe the same. Okay, here. And here you're showing the two different photos that were merged together. Great job on that photo merge. Really, really nice. All right, and then JD for the day 3 challenge, some black and white and color, and you've got your poem there as well. Bright place for watching, a many ideal sheep, thanks in spite of the salt. Very, very good. I'm loving these entries. Fantastic job, everyone who entered. So that's it for our daily creative challenge. Thank you so much for entering. As you know, we're going to continue this every single week here on Adobe Live. So just a great chance to kind of pop in the morning, check in with Kathleen as she issues new challenges every single day, and we get to review them here as well. So if you're interested in having your work promoted here on Adobe Live, all you have to do is join our Discord server and submit your images, and we get to review your work. So it's a great chance to get a little shout out and get some Photoshop practice in. Alrighty, fantastic. Well, Pierre, thanks so much. All right, we've got about 20 minutes left here for Pierre. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. I love how we've got the split toning there right before the broadcast. Can you just show everyone the before and after with that split toning one more time?
Yep. So before, split toning, and after. It's really all about the mood. Like your split toning is all about mood. Now, big note, if you turn your image black and white and you have split toning, your split toning will still matter. Meaning if you apply a preset after, or if you try to apply split toning after. So that's something where you have to be careful with split toning. It is not something that it comes as an overlay. Basically, it's not changing your image. It's like being painted on top of it. Mm-hmm. That's probably a terrible technical explanation, but that's kind of how I see it. Like I just basically put a filter on top of it. So just be mindful, especially if you use that in presets. Sometimes it can go a little funny. Why don't we save that one
Great.
Or actually, I'm just going to show you how I would use it again, even without saving it. I would just press on another image, for example, and I would press previews, see what happens. Clearly doesn't work because when you do previews, you have all the local adjustments.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what do? You press Command C or edit and copy, and then you're going to choose what you want to copy. Same concept as when you do presets. And that's why I'm like, if you see yourself doing that 2-3 times with the same types of images, with the same settings, just create a preset and be done with it. You don't have to think about it again after. So I disable all the local stuff, and I'm going to try to apply it, for example, to that image. I'm going to press previews, and here we go. Now we can see it's not going well at all, because that's not what I would like to do on that image. What I would like to do is clearly have something warmer. And the moment you bring it warmer, again, I copied the white balance, because when I do copy, usually I copy it to, for example, the same image shot just after. Actually, you know what? I have it. So I show you when it works and when it doesn't.
Great.
It should be right there. So here we go. You see that image was shot in like portrait and in landscape, but here is a shot that basically that was on the other corner of the, sorry, it's like me turning 90 degrees to my left, and this is another shot. So if I were to paste it here, that works perfectly. So I just pressed paste, and that completely works. Now we have the same tones as in that image. We get something consistent. You see the shadows here are a little blue. It works well. That shot would probably be recropped to remove a little bit of that left side, or I would drastically darken it. Again, trying to remove some of the attention that goes to that car. It's completely useless when your whole story is actually happening right there. So that's where you might want to go and do a funny crop just to see what it would look like, maybe in square or kind of square. There we go.
Yep.
I like to play
your aspect. Yep. There we go.
Yeah. I like to play with that and even do funny crops sometimes, just to see what I can keep. And there we go. Now I find that it's missing a little bit on the left. So that's a possibility. Now it's a little bit too much. So here I would create different crops, and I would even do one where I went in with my gradient here and completely darkened out that side a little bit more. And just not too much because it has to look natural, but let's see, we could bring it like that, and just to see if you can remove a little bit of that attention and bring it more to the right. There we go.
Yeah, you could even use the spot removal tool to get rid of the headlight to make it look like that car is not shining.
Very good idea. Let's try it. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Hop. But that's not pretty, so you have to be more precise. That's where actually I would go to Photoshop, Aaron. That's the one time, because there is a lot going on, and the brush tool and the cloning is great, but just for spots. But here, the light is kind of complex. If we look at it, whoops, I zoomed a million times. One sec, guys. There we go. The light is complex. It's kind of poking out also of the car. So if you remove just the headlight, what happens is that you end up with a patch. Even if your feather is like 100, it does look weird to have those streaks of light come out, but have no light. So that's probably one of those Photoshop day. And last thing, this one in like 16:9 could also be a very interesting shot, just like that. So a little bit more of a cinematic mood here with the color and the crop. So if we go back to the photo where we are like, it doesn't work. Well, good news is by changing a little bit the white balance, we were able to get something a little bit more accurate to what you would want to see in that image, right? And again, we don't have local adjustments. Actually, we do have one that went through my copy paste, and we have a second one. So there we go. That's why I'm like always creating presets and not relying too much on the copy paste. I tend to do mistakes over several images without noticing it, just like we did it right now. It's very easy for one of those little spots to get in and you miss it and you're like, oh, damn it, I didn't see it. Okay. That's something I kind of want to emphasize on. Those presets, you might be like, I don't like presets because every single piece is different. Yes, it's different, but the tones don't change sometimes. You want to have certain sunset, you want to have a sunrise tone, then you want to have some night tweak, night feeling, or you want to have something that's really warm. It's really up to you and your creative style, how you can shine it through different photos and keep it consistent.
So Pierre, we have a question from the chat. Ferry is asking us, what is your suggestions for getting low noise photos if you're going to be doing low light?
Great question. First of all, you want to make sure that your shutter speed is as low as possible while keeping your subject in sharpness. Can we say in sharpness? Sharp?
You can say whatever you want.
So for example, that shot that's completely unedited right now, I can show you an edited version, was shot at 1/20th of a second. And my whole goal in that image was actually just to keep, here we go, edited version. The goal was to keep the shutter speed low, but not too low that my subject would be blurry, right?
Okay.
So the poles are sharp because they're not moving. That person doesn't move, but the train is blurry. So my ISO was able to stay very low in that train, by shooting at 1/20th. If I had to shoot fast shutter speed, I would have been at a ISO probably 1,000, 2,000, something like that. And that would have been problematic. In that shot, I could have gotten the same shot with an ISO that was way lower, maybe I would say ISO 400, by dragging my shutter down. So depending on your camera, you're going to want to know where your limit is. My previous camera's limit was around 6,400. This one, it still looks good at 12,800. If you take your A7S III, it's still gonna look good at 100,000 maybe. So it's really up to you and your gear, but every time you can, especially if you have time, if you're not in a rush, try to keep it low, right?
Yeah, and then do you use a tripod when you're shooting, or do you just try to brace the camera?
I brace the camera. If I can walk around my whole life without a tripod, I'm such a happier human being. The simple reason is traveling light and having less gear doesn't get as much in the creative process for me. So that's something to keep in mind.
Fantastic. We've got about 5 minutes left, Pierre. Let's do some boom, boom, boom. Let's see what we can do to this image very quickly.
All right. Why don't we just edit those two?
Great.
Super quickly. So we're going to bring up our warmth, their white balance, sorry. Bring it a little bit more light. And then we're going to slap our sunrise preset. And we're like, hey, it looks already pretty good. Just before and after. We've got more details, more in the image. Here's really a shot where you would bring up the shadows a little bit. And you're kind of happy with just that. Look at that. Boom.
That's
boom.
Great.
The car pops. And that's, again, the same preset we just created. So same thing. Let's add that preset. Shot around sunrise again. Add a little bit more light in here. Increase a little bit my white balance. And here I would do more. I'll show you why. But I would add a little bit more clarity in that shot. And I would bring a little bit more of the shadows. So you see, you can go very quickly through your images, and then you can do your local adjustments fast and efficiently to really, really try to get something nice. So let me show you what I'm doing with the road. I'm basically making the road darker, but without affecting my white arrow, because I want the white arrow to pop. So luminance, mask, there we go. A little before, after.
Oh, that's a great tip.
It took you 2 seconds, and it looks so much better.
Great tip here.
And last one, you could try the preset on that one, totally different light, and you realize that, hey, it's not that bad. Like to start off, let's see if we do our white balance. Maybe I'll drag it down a little bit, increase a little bit of exposure. There we go. And then apply the preset. We have a pretty good base already, in my opinion. And now you can play a little bit more with that specific image. If you want to add even more contrast because you have different type of light, there we go. And voila, it takes, once you have something, and this is something you would change in Photoshop, or you want to keep it actually because it gives a feeling that this car is popping out of a construction site.
Yeah, it's cool.
So that's exactly what you want to do. And here is a good example where you might want to correct the lens a little bit to get your building a little straighter. Remember, it adds a little bit more light, so you might want to adjust after. So without the local adjustments, before, after, same preset as we created earlier. We're trying to keep something consistent. If you have any questions, let me know.
Great. Well, Pierre, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic stream. I've learned a ton, and I think we can all see how Lightroom presets can really speed up your workflow. So really great to create those presets. Make sure to leave out things like exposure and white balance. You want to make sure you correct those individually for photos. And when you're creating your presets, be sure to try them on a few different photos to see what works. Also, we got some great advice on packaging up your presets, selling and marketing those. So if you guys didn't see that earlier in the stream, be sure to rewatch because there was some fantastic advice. I know Pierre has been selling presets for a while and it's worked out very well for him. So let's go ahead and take a look at our upcoming schedule. We've got our next up class is Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge with Clady. Hey Clady, how you doing? We've got Packaging Design with Nick Longo, our XD Daily Creative Challenge with Howard Pinsky, and then our Design Off with Voodoo Val and Made by Lisa Marie. And we've got, yes, definitely. So we've got just a brief little outro here. Pierre, can you just show us a few of your before and afters so everyone can get an idea of everything we've learned today? We've got just a couple of minutes here.
All right, so let's go with the first one. We had, so that was the first shot we worked on. That was Aaron's pick. That was the that was your pick. That was the public's pick.
Yep.
So if we look at before, oh no.
Maybe we can hit the Y
here's
buttons.
a trick. Yeah, here's the trick, guys. When you do before, after, if you create a virtual copy after you did edits, it's not going to work to the reset. It's something you need to remember. It's a bummer, I have to be honest. So you need to go back to the original image and then do your before after.
There we go.
That's when you see the difference. So subtle, but impactful, in my opinion, to bring out some details and increase that feeling with the light. Then we had that shot, which we used the same preset that we created and increased that light over there, increase that feeling of like gold or like bronze here. Kind of like it really shines through all the way down in the building. And we had our lady at night on her phone, just being lit by the phone, nothing else.
Beautiful. I love this shot.
Use those split tonings here to get the ambience, the feel at night. And remember, whenever you're using something cooler, it's going to make it a little bit more lonely or less warm in the feeling. Meaning if it's really warm, there is like a lot of love coming through. When it's more blue, it's more like, meh, all right, I'm a little bit lonely here. And then we tried to slap the preset on those two images with very few tweaks, worked out. Obviously, you would want to rework on those images later on with like local adjustments to take it to the top. But just in 2 seconds, you're already like 80% there. The 20% that left are usually the longest, but that's also where, as a creator, you can shine through. And the last shot was that one. And although I'm kind of okay with that shot right now, I do feel like it still needs a lot of work for the simple reason that how do you call that? That steam needs to be enhanced, that car needs to be enhanced. There's like maybe darken a little bit the front. And I think I have an edited version right there. Oh, there we go. You see, you edit on different days and you get completely different tones.
That's very true.
And that's basically all the work I did on that one compared to the version we did today. To go from here to here, this is all local adjustments, and the white balance is a little bit lower also. So remember, local adjustments is where it's at. Presets are great as a base, not as an end.
Fantastic. Well, Pierre, thank you so much for those final tips. And thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget, we've got a great lineup for the rest of the day. So stick around. My personal favorite thing to do, I've got 2 monitors set up. So I love to do my work on my monitor here and then have Adobe Live on the left. It feels like I'm kind of hanging out with some creative friends and we're working on projects together. So that's my personal preference, but we've got so many great things coming up for you the rest of today and the rest of the week. So thank you so much for everyone for watching. Pierre, thank you for sharing your knowledge on Adobe Live. Alrighty. Well, thanks so much again. We'll see you guys next time. We'll
Thank you, everyone.
Wave goodbye, Pierre.
Bye.